We're done with you. Don't ever find us again. I stared at the glowing screen of my phone, the harsh blue light reflecting off my kitchen counter. It was 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. The message came from my son, David. Beside it was a photo of him, his wife, Rachel, and my 2 grandchildren smiling at a pumpkin patch I wasn't invited to. I didn't drop the phone. I didn't collapse onto the cold tile floor in a puddle of tears. My name is Sophia Fleming. At 68, I had buried a husband and rebuilt my life. A text message, even one this cruel, wasn't going to break me. I read the words once more. We're done with you. For the past 3 years since my husband passed, I had been their built-in babysitter, their emergency fund, and their quiet housekeeper whenever Rachel felt overwhelmed. But recently, I had started saying no. I refused to cancel my gardening club to watch the kids so Rachel could get her nails done. I suppose this text was their ultimate punishment. They expected me to panic, to flood their phones with apologies and beg for a place in their lives. I tapped the reply box. My fingers were steady. Understood. I hit send. Then I opened my banking app. Every month, 2 automatic transfers left my account: $1,500 for their house mortgage and $800 for David's online master's degree tuition. It was a habit of generosity I started when my husband died, wanting to make their lives easier. I navigated to the recurring payments tab. Swipe, cancel, swipe, cancel. The quiet hum of the refrigerator filled the kitchen. I turned off the lights and walked up the stairs to my bedroom, feeling strangely lighter. I pulled the quilt over my shoulders and closed my eyes. They wanted space. I was giving them the entire universe. But I knew one thing for certain. By the next morning, reality was going to hit them hard. The sun filtered through the oak tree outside my bedroom window, casting warm, dancing shadows on the floor. I woke up at my usual 7 o'clock stretched and walked downstairs to make coffee. Usually by this time, I'd have 3 texts from Rachel reminding me of some errand I needed to run for her or asking me to drop off groceries. Today, the screen was blank. The silence was absolute, and I savored it with every sip of my dark roast. It wasn't until 9:15 a.m. that my phone finally vibrated against the wooden table. The caller ID flashed David's name. I let it ring. 2 minutes later, Rachel called. I watched the screen light up, took another sip of coffee, and silenced the device. The sudden urgency wasn't because they missed me. The mortgage payment was scheduled for the 1st of the month, which was today. My bank usually processed it by 9:00 a.m. They had just checked their accounts. I finished my breakfast, washed the mug, and grabbed my gardening gloves. It was a beautiful Tuesday, and my hydrangeas needed pruning. While I clipped away the dead blooms, I thought about the boundaries I had let them trample. I had paid for the privilege of being treated like a nuisance in their home. Rachel would roll her eyes when I offered advice. David would scroll on his phone while I cooked Sunday dinner. They only smiled when the checkbook was open. Around noon, my phone chimed with a voicemail. I played it on speaker while pulling weeds. Mom, David's voice sounded tight, frantic. The bank says our mortgage transfer failed, and the university portal blocked my registration for next semester. Did you change your account? Call me back immediately. We need this fixed today. There was no mention of the text from last night. No, we're done with you. Just demands. I removed my gloves, dusted off my hands, and walked inside. I wasn't going to fix anything. I wondered how long it would take for them to show up at my door. They didn't make me wait long. At exactly 2:00 p.m., tires crunched violently on my gravel driveway. I was sitting on the porch with a glass of iced tea when David's SUV slammed into park. He marched up the steps, Rachel trailing closely behind him. Her usual perfectly curated expression was replaced with a tight, nervous scowl. Mom, what is going on? David demanded, stopping at the top step. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't look remorseful. I took a slow sip of my tea. Good afternoon, David. Rachel. Don't good afternoon us. Rachel snapped, crossing her arms. The mortgage bounced. We have late fees now, and David's classes are on hold. You need to call your bank and fix whatever glitch is happening. There is no glitch. I set my glass down on the wicker table. I canceled the transfers. David stared at me, his jaw slack. What? Why would you do that? I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened the message thread. I held the screen towards him. You sent this last night. We're done with you. Don't ever find us again. I am simply honoring your request. A flush of red crept up David's neck. He looked at Rachel, then back at me. Mom, you know how Rachel gets when she's stressed? We were just upset about you refusing to watch the kids this weekend. We needed space, not for you to cut us off. Space from me, but not from my wallet. I replied evenly. That's not how it works. You are adults. If you are done with me, I am done paying your bills. You're acting crazy, Rachel interjected, her voice pitching higher. You can't just pull the rug out from under us. We rely on that money. Then you should have thought about that before treating me like a disposable ATM. I stood up, picking up my glass. Now please leave my porch. You have a mortgage to figure out. Rachel's eyes narrowed. If you don't turn that money back on, you will never see your grandchildren again. Her threat hung in the warm afternoon air. A year ago, those words would have brought me to my knees. I would have written a check immediately just to ensure I could still read bedtime stories to little Mia and Leo. Rachel knew this. She had used the children as pawns for years, granting me access only when it served her schedule. But the woman she was trying to manipulate had vanished the moment I read their cruel text message. I looked straight into Rachel's eyes. Using the children as a bargaining chip is low even for you. But it won't work anymore. Goodbye, Rachel. I walked inside and locked the front door, leaving them standing on the porch. Through the window, I watched David throw his hands up in frustration before they finally got in the car and sped away. The next morning, I woke up with a clear agenda. I knew Rachel's tactics. When threats didn't work, she used forced compliance. Sure enough, at 8:00 a.m., my neighbor called. Sophia, David, and Rachel just pulled up to your house. They're getting the kids out of the car. They were trying to drop Mia and Leo off unannounced, knowing I wouldn't leave two young children standing on the porch alone. They wanted to force me back into the role of obedient nanny. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my purse, my car keys, and slipped out the back door. I walked quietly through the tall hedges dividing my property from my neighbors, got into my car, parked on the side street, and drove away. I spent the morning at a quiet cafe downtown, treating myself to a warm croissant and reading a novel. At 8:15 a.m., my phone began vibrating continuously. 10 missed calls from David, 5 from Rachel. Then a furious voicemail. Sophia, where are you? Rachel shouted through the speaker. We are going to be late for work. You are supposed to be here. Call me right now. I deleted the message, ordered a second cup of coffee, and smiled. The dynamic had shifted, and I was holding the reins. But I knew this was just the beginning of the extraction. The week passed in relative peace. Without the constant drain of their demands, my days felt incredibly long and wonderfully mine. I repainted the guest room, went to my book club without checking my watch, and slept through the night. But the financial untangling was far from over. For 3 years, David and Rachel had kept a large climate-controlled storage unit across town. It housed Rachel's extensive seasonal decorations, David's old college furniture, and a mountain of clutter they couldn't fit in their pristine home. The lease was in my name, and the automatic credit card charge was $200 a month. On Thursday morning, I drove down to the storage facility. I walked into the front office and greeted the manager, a kind man named Gary. Hi, Gary. I need to close out Unit 4002 by the end of the month. I told him, sliding my ID across the counter. Sure thing, Sophia. You'll need to have it completely emptied out by the 30th, he replied, typing into his computer. I'll let the people using it know, I said. I walked out to my car and drafted a simple email to David. I didn't call or text. I wanted everything in writing. David, I have canceled the lease on the storage unit. It is paid through the end of this month. You have until the 30th to remove your belongings, or the facility will dispose of them. Sophia. I hit send and drove to the grocery store. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. I was systematically dismantling the comfortable infrastructure they had built on my back. I was no longer funding their excess. When I returned home and checked the mailbox, a thick envelope from my insurance company was waiting for me. I tore it open at the kitchen counter. It was the renewal policy for our shared auto insurance plan. I was paying the premiums for their 2 luxury SUVs. I picked up a pen and circled the amount. It was time to make another cut. The auto insurance company handled my request quickly. I removed their vehicles from my policy effective Friday at midnight. I emailed David the confirmation number and a brief note telling him to secure his own coverage. Unsurprisingly, my phone began ringing almost instantly, but I kept it on silent. Saturday evening arrived, bringing a crisp breeze and a sense of calm. I was settling in to watch a movie when my phone buzzed with an incoming call from the Oakwood Country Club. My husband and I had been members for 30 years. I had kept the membership active, and David and Rachel frequently used it to entertain their friends, billing the food and drinks to my account. I answered the phone. Hello, this is Sophia. Mrs. Fleming, this is the dining room manager at Oakwood. The voice sounded uncomfortable. I'm so sorry to bother you, but your son and daughter-in-law are here with a party of 8. When the server tried to run the charges to your member account, it was declined. It seems you removed them from the approved guest list yesterday. That is correct, I said calmly. They are no longer authorized to use my account. They will need to pay for their dinner with their own credit card. Understood, ma'am. Thank you. I hung up, imagining the scene unfolding in the elegant dining room. Rachel loved showing off at the club, ordering expensive bottles of wine and acting like she owned the place. Being forced to hand over her own credit card in front of her friends would be a massive blow to her ego. An hour later, headlights swept across my living room wall. I didn't get up from my armchair. Heavy footsteps pounded up the porch steps, followed by loud, persistent knocking. Mom, open the door! David yelled. I walked to the entryway and pulled the door open. David stood there alone, his face pale and furious in the porch light. He looked smaller than usual, stripped of Rachel's confident shadow. The real confrontation had finally arrived. You humiliated us, David hissed, stepping into the foyer uninvited. Rachel's parents were there, her friends. The manager came over to the table and told us our tab was declined. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? I crossed my arms, feeling no pity for the man standing in front of me. It's only humiliating if you're pretending to be something you're not. If you can't afford to host a party at the country club, you shouldn't host one. David ran a hand through his hair, looking desperate. Mom, please. You have to stop this. Rachel has been crying for 2 days. We had to use our emergency credit card to pay for dinner. The storage unit, email, the car insurance. You're ruining us financially. No, David, I corrected him. I am simply stopping my financial support. If removing my money ruins you, it means you were living beyond your means. He softened his tone, trying to play the victim. It's Rachel, Mom. You know how she is. She pushes for things, and I just try to keep the peace. I didn't want to send that text. She took my phone and typed it because she was mad about the babysitting. I'm sorry, okay. Just turn the automatic payments back on, and we can go back to normal. I stared at my son. For years, I had blamed Rachel for his behavior. I had made excuses for him, telling myself he was just passive and easily influenced. But standing here listening to him throw his wife under the bus just to get his allowance back, I saw the truth. He wasn't a victim. He was complicit. He was greedy. "You let her send it," I said quietly. "You watched her type it and you let her hit send. You only care now because the money stopped." "That's not true." "Go home, David." I pointed to the door. "And don't come back asking for money." He opened his mouth to argue, but something in my expression stopped him. As he turned to leave, a piece of paper fell from his jacket pocket onto the rug. He didn't notice. I waited until his car disappeared down the street before I picked it up. I took the folded paper into the kitchen and flattened it under the pendant light. It was a printed email crumpled and stained with coffee, but the text was perfectly clear. It was a correspondence between Rachel and a local contractor dated 3 weeks ago. Subject: estimate for in-law suite conversion. I read the body of the email. Rachel was requesting a quote to convert their basement into a living space. The final sentence made my blood run cold. "We need this completed by next month so my mother can move in permanently. My mother-in-law won't be coming around anymore, so parking won't be an issue." I sat heavily on the kitchen stool. The pieces finally clicked together. The sudden text message cutting me off, the manufactured outrage over babysitting, it wasn't a spontaneous argument. It was a calculated plan. They wanted me out of their lives so Rachel's mother could move in, but they fully expected me to keep paying their mortgage while they did it. They thought I was foolish enough to fund the house that they were kicking me out of. A cold, sharp clarity washed over me. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was resolute. They had shown me exactly who they were, and I was going to believe them. The next morning, I gathered all the paperwork linking me to their lives. I went to the cell phone store and officially split our family plan, leaving them responsible for their own lines. I logged into the toll pass account for the highways, removed their license plates, and changed the password. Every tiny thread of convenience I had provided was severed. By Friday, my finances were completely isolated from theirs. I had reclaimed over $2,000 a month. I sat at my dining table, looking at the neat stack of confirmation receipts. The house was quiet, and for the first time in a long time, it felt entirely mine. But there was one last thing to do. I needed to face them on my own terms. Sunday afternoon, I pulled into David and Rachel's driveway. The house, the one I had helped them keep for 3 years, looked perfectly manicured. I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. Rachel opened it. Her face tightened the moment she saw me. "What are you doing here?" "I came to drop off some final paperwork," I said, holding a manila folder. I didn't wait for an invitation. I simply stepped past her into the foyer. David was sitting in the living room watching television. He jumped up when I walked in. "Mom, what's going on?" I placed the folder on the coffee table. "This contains the transfer of the cell phone plans, the cancellation of the toll passes, and the final receipt for the storage unit. Everything is in your name now." Rachel crossed her arms, her face flushing with anger. "You are so vindictive. You're doing this just to punish us because we wanted some boundaries." "I'm not punishing you," I said calmly. "I am accepting your boundaries. You wanted me out of your lives. I am out." I looked directly at Rachel. "And I know about the basement conversion for your mother. I hope she enjoys the house." Rachel's jaw dropped. David looked panicked, turning to his wife. "You left the estimate at my house," I explained smoothly. "You were paying the mortgage for your grandchildren." Rachel sputtered, trying to regain control. "Not for my mother. I was paying the mortgage because I loved my son," I corrected. "But my son decided a text message was the appropriate way to discard me while keeping my money. I'm downsizing. I've put my house on the market and I'm moving to a coastal community in Florida next month. I won't be around to bother you." The silence in the room was absolute. They had no leverage left. The money was gone. The free childcare was gone. And now the proximity was gone. "Mom, wait!" David stepped forward, his voice cracking. "Florida. You can't just leave." I looked at him, feeling a profound sense of closure. "Watch me." The ocean breeze ruffled my hair as I sat on the balcony of my new condo. The Florida sun was warm, reflecting off the sparkling blue water. It had been 6 months since I left the manila folder on David's coffee table. 6 months since I packed up my life and drove south. My new community was vibrant. I had joined a local gardening club, started taking watercolor classes, and made friends who appreciated my company, not my checkbook. My bank account was healthy, but more importantly, my mind was at peace. My phone chimed on the small patio table. It was a message from David. "Hi, Mom. Mia asks about you a lot. We're really struggling with the mortgage since Rachel's mom moved in. Can we talk? Maybe visit for a weekend?" I read the words slowly. There was a time when that text would have sent me into a flurry of anxiety and guilt. I would have offered to fly them down, pay for their flights, and write a check to fix their problems. Not anymore. I picked up the phone. I didn't feel anger, just a quiet, solid boundary that protected my peace. I was perfectly fine with them visiting to see the kids, but it would be on my terms in a hotel they paid for with no discussions about money. I typed my reply carefully. "I would love to see Mia and Leo. Let me know when you book your hotel and we can meet at the beach park for an afternoon." I hit send and set the phone down. I didn't wait for a response. I picked up my watercolor brush, dipped it in a bright, vivid blue, and turned back to my canvas. The horizon was wide open, and for the first time in years, I was exactly where I wanted to be.